Alrighty, well, it is time for Wrestling Nostalgia, and tonight we're going to take a bit of a different approach and give the women some love, and looking back at Trish Stratus versus Mickie James at WrestleMania 22. That's 15 years ago we're going back tonight. Oh, and I've got some thoughts on Goldberg versus Roman Reigns. Let's get it started right now.
It's time for your weekly fix of wrestling nostalgia, when we look at wrestling's past eras, from the Attitude Era to the Reality Era.
I'd like to think that maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon's dead, but the fact is, it's going to get taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law and the rest of his stupid family.
To today, here on the WWE Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Wrestling Nostalgia portion of the WWE Podcast. I always say this is my favorite show of the week because it allows you to disconnect. It allows you to disconnect from even the current product if you're not happy with it, and just go back in time. And we go back to a time that typically we all love. If you're a wrestling fan from the Attitude Era forward, for whatever reason, we look back with awe. We always look back and go, oh man, if wrestling was like it was. But while you're in it, you take it for granted, don't you? You take it for granted that you have on Raw a tag team match between The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin versus the NWO. Do you remember that on Monday Night Raw? You take for granted so many main events that you'd sell your left leg to have main event WrestleMania now, and you just took it for granted every single Monday night. So tonight we get to go back. We get to look back at a women's match, which I told you I would do. I promised I would do. And this is Trish Stratus. This is Mickie James, WrestleMania 22. But before we get there, there was some breaking news on WWE's The Bump. You know, the show that really nobody watches on the network until it makes big news. That show. It did drop some pretty big news today. The show that aired today on December 9th was featuring Goldberg as the guest on the beginning of the show, the first half hour or so. And, well, I'll just let you listen to it. And I've got some thoughts on this one for sure, as I'm sure many of you do as well.
Thank you so much, Goldberg.
You're the coolest, Goldberg. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys and girls. As always, it's a privilege and a pleasure. And who's next? Roman's next.
My heart.
Take that, Roman Reigns.
All right, so they just kind of have some kind of awkward chemistry there, but he confirmed Roman is next. Bill Goldberg said Roman is next. So this was, again, if you remember, all the way back from, 8 months ago? When we had the pandemic kind of first begin, and it was scheduled to be Roman Reigns versus Goldberg at WrestleMania, and that got filled with Braun Strowman versus Goldberg at WrestleMania. So it looks like this match is still going to happen. That WWE still said, let's put it in our back pocket, and we're going to bring it out, and we're going to have this still happen when the time is right. And I'm sure they would have loved this in front of fans, as I'm sure they would have loved a whole bunch of other stuff in front of fans. But this is a match that is going to happen. And here's what I think, if you're going to ask, wait, well, how's this all play out? Here's what's happening. In my estimation, I have no inside information whatsoever. So I think Kevin Owens, unfortunately, is going to be a stepping stone. Kevin Owens is not a destination. It's not a long-term program with Roman. He is simply another notch on the belt of Roman Reigns in his heel progression, which, again, I am a huge fan of Roman Reigns as a heel. What they've done so far is admirable. It's commendable. It's award-winning. It's great. I have no complaints at all with Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Paul Heyman. It has been brilliant. That being said, Kevin Owens has really not been relevant since WrestleMania, since he jumped off the WrestleMania sign, injured himself. We didn't see him. He came back. He did a little bit of nothing and has been bouncing around, not having any steady program to really sink his teeth into. And now gets Roman Reigns, and we're saying, oh my God, finally, now here we go. You know, Kevin Owens is at least, maybe he's not going to win the championship, but maybe this is a sign that they're going to continue to put him in the main event more consistently, which consistency has not been the friend of Kevin Owens whatsoever. And I think this pretty much squashes that in terms of working with Roman Reigns beyond the TLC pay-per-view. I just don't think that there is any possibility now, because I think here's what's going to happen. Based on what Goldberg said, that they could build this starting in January. Don't forget, January is really the beginning of their new season. They may have their season premiere in October or September or whatever date that they just kind of make up every year. But their true new year starts for me in when the calendar turns to the next year. And that to me is when things get going again. It's WrestleMania season and we're off to the races. So I always look to and point to and circle that date on my calendar when there's that first Monday Night Raw after the new year. That always just really seems to be when things, get kicked into gear. We have big stars come back, big storylines start to show themselves. And I think that's what's going to happen there, where, Roman Reigns gloats for a couple of weeks about how no one's in his league and he's the head of the table, and he just continues to really pound into everyone's brains that he is indeed what he says he is. He's the tribal chief, so on and so forth. And then you hear Goldberg's music hit the very first Friday Night SmackDown when the new year begins. Now, they could stretch this out to WrestleMania. They could have Goldberg debut towards WrestleMania, and they just pushed it out to where this drags out for a couple of months and they don't actually meet for until April, late March, or whenever WrestleMania is happening this year. Or they could have it happen at the Royal Rumble. Either way, Goldberg probably won't be coming back on TV until, I'd say, early January. Which, again, for Kevin Owens fans is not encouraging. I really am not trying to be the bearer of bad news. I'm a Kevin Owens fan myself. I think he's gotten the proverbial shaft for many years in WWE. And yes, he's been Universal Champion. And people may say that to me, but I would say, how did he win it? Anybody remember how he won it? It was in August of, 2016, 2017, when he won the Universal Championship by a returning Triple H, literally handing it to him, turning on Seth Rollins. Anybody remember that? Yeah. So Kevin Owens hasn't exactly gotten a really good shake in terms of long-term sustainability in the main event. Oh, and by the way, who beat Kevin Owens for the Universal Championship? I know that answer. Goldberg. He's the one that ended Kevin Owens' reign. He also ended the reign of The Fiend. So, Goldberg, I really believe, had this been in front of fans, I miss fans so much. Because WWE has gotten away with murder in some certain areas of their storylines over the last 8 months. Not having to hear fans booing what they want cheered and cheer what they want booed. And it's not to be rebellious, but I love honesty. And I love instant honesty. And I am really, really looking forward to the days when they can bring fans back. And I'm hoping moving to Tropicana Field in a massive setting, you can at least partially 10, 20, 25% capacity, something along those lines, that they can fill it. And hopefully for the Royal Rumble, they can fill it to a partial capacity with masks and distancing and all that stuff, as we all have really just kind of adapted to our lives now. So those are my thoughts on what's going to happen. Now, do I like it? Because I know you guys are really, really just on the edge of your seat. What do I think about this in terms of not just how it's going to happen, but in terms of, do I like the execution? Do I like how it's going to happen if this does indeed happen? I was never a WCW guy. Never. I never was. Not that I didn't like the product, but WWE during the Monday Night Wars was just superior, period. They were just superior in the organization of their in the organization of their product, the way they presented it. They had Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was the absolute magnet of eyeballs. You had The Undertaker, you had Kane, you had The Rock, you had a all-star cast, and it just seemed to flow better. Plus, the announcers, I think, were better than what WCW had to offer. I so I followed Goldberg, and I looked at him, and I'd flip through the channels, and I'd be like, yeah, this guy looks like Stone Cold. He's a Stone Cold wannabe. That's how I'd look at him, because I was a WWE guy, so a little bias, of course. The streak is certainly nothing to sneeze at. It's really the one thing Goldberg has to hang his hat on. So there's that. I don't hate Goldberg. I don't love Goldberg. I'll put it that way. I kind of find him neutral. I look at him and I'm like, all right, well, he's got the look. Kind of looks like Austin, more muscular than Austin. He's got a cool finish, but how many people use the spear, right? How many people have used the spear over the years? Edge, Roman Reigns, Goldberg, I'm sure among others I'm missing. It's a fairly common finish. And Rhino, there's another one. I don't dislike Goldberg. I don't hate him. I don't like him. I'm not going to sit there and lose my mind every time he comes back on TV. I'm just going to be like, okay, cool. It's a little bit of nostalgia for those that watch WCW. And yeah, I watched his 2004 run with WWE with The Rock and Triple H. That was really underwhelming. But to me, I'm not a huge Goldberg fan, so I feel very neutral. That being said, I'm not a babyface Roman Reigns fan. I am a massive Roman Reigns heel fan. Does that mean that I would cheer Roman Reigns because he's a heel and I like what he's doing? No. See, this is also what WWE management and higher-ups and probably agents and Triple H himself or whoever is in the creative process, especially Vince McMahon, probably believes that the people that are booing Roman Reigns as a babyface would cheer him as a heel. I would argue no, because if you're doing your damn job, you know how to actually create real heel heat for yourself. Make people legitimately hate you. Not be a cool, entertaining heel. See, that's the difference. So many heels over the years have become cool and entertaining and often funny, yet they're cast as heels, so we cheer them. And WWE is like, wait a minute, but they're cast as a heel. It's because they've lost the art of creating a true heel. Right? Very few guys have done that now. Randy Orton is a select few. So I believe that they would still boo Roman Reigns because he is that dislikable, because he is that genuinely believable on TV that that's how he is in real life. It comes across so natural. It's great. But my point is, to this match, I would probably want Roman Reigns to win. In fact, I know I would. To lose to Goldberg, let me tell you this, if Goldberg comes in and beats Roman Reigns, I think there's going to be hell to pay in fan backlash. There's going to be a ton of fan backlash if indeed Goldberg comes in just to flatten Roman Reigns and leave. Look out. I mean, it will be a uprising that you've never seen before, because people are behind the Roman Reigns heel character, love to hate him, wouldn't cheer him. There's a distinction there. I want to make that distinction. They see the progress. They love what's happening with Roman, and they know that if Goldberg was to come in and just beat him, it would pour cold water on the entire process, the entire progression of the character as a heel, just to give it to a guy that's just going to leave, in Goldberg, that's just going to kind of come and go, and he's not the future of anything. He's a legacy star. He has name brand value, recognition. He's a needle mover. He would get eyeballs on the product for a short time. And when he's gone, he's gone. Roman's going to be there every week. He's the future. So it would be a fatal flaw if Goldberg comes in and beats Roman. Not just a critical mistake. Not just one of those, he can bounce back. No. Roman needs to beat Goldberg and beat Goldberg decisively. And I hope he does. I really hope that he does. I don't see any logic in Goldberg winning. None. Zero. I don't want Roman Reigns to lose a match for a very, very long time. So, we're going to get the whole spear versus spear. That's coming. The spear versus spear. And WWE already alluded to it. It's on WWE.com's website about Goldberg saying that Roman's next. I mean, so I'm not really breaking any news here. I'm way behind in the news cycle, even though it's something that dropped today. That's how fast information moves. But it's already out there. So WWE is already kind of giving the fans a heads up, which tells you Kevin Owens ain't lasting long. He's going to be pretty decisively beaten. and another notch on the belt of Roman Reigns, which to me is worth it. As much as I love Kevin Owens, the heel turn by Roman is that important that I would be willing to sacrifice Kevin Owens for this, and that's hard for me to swallow. But then we get Goldberg up next. And yeah, we're going to get probably a 5-6 minute match of spears and spears and spears and a couple of jackhammers and kickouts. And that's just the Goldberg format because he cannot hang very long because his moveset has about as many different moves as I have fingers on my hand. I mean, that's what he did. I mean, he was very successful at it, but his moveset is, I mean, you talk about limited. Jeez. So that's really what I would expect, guys, for the next couple of months. Now, again, they could string this to WrestleMania with Goldberg and Roman. They could blow it at the Rumble. But either way, this is the next program for Roman. So we've been told that. And look, it's fine if Roman wins and it's another notch on the belt of Roman Reigns. And Goldberg can come in and say, hey, so where you been? You know, I thought you and I were supposed to meet in the ring 9 months ago. You know, he could really harp on the fact that Roman Reigns was too scared to face him. And it'll be the short and sweet Goldberg promos. Everything with Goldberg is short and sweet. Everything. From promos to moves to matches. Everything is just high impact, boom, boom, boom. Okay, I'm out of here. Goodbye. Give me my paycheck and I'm gone. I'm going back to my hotel, going back to my life. And I'll see you in a few months for the Saudi Arabia show for a big payday. And good night. I mean, that's essentially Goldberg in a nutshell. So, okay. This is Wrestling Nostalgia Night. We're going to get to Mickie James and Trish Stratus, a match that, watching back, I think would stand up to today's women's quality of wrestling. And I didn't think I'd be able to say that watching it back. You know, when you look back at WrestleMania 22, which was 15 years ago, this coming April, of course, so almost 15 years. When you look back at that, you think in your mind, oh, it's going to be one of those terrible women's matches that is, you know, can't hold a candle to today's women's matches, and it's going to be embarrassing to watch. No, that is not the case. These women were physical. The story was really good. I remember this one very well too, and credit to Mimi Burris, who gave me the idea for this. So credit where credit is due. And one of our co-hosts, the newest co-hosts, who hosts the Highs and Lows of the Week. You can catch that every Sunday. And this is, again, the story was really good. So I'm going to get into the story in a minute. But before I do, I want to give you guys the lay of the land, as I always do whenever I pull a match out of thin air, especially on a pay-per-view, to give you the rest of the card so you understand, you know, kind of the other things going on. It'll give you a sense of the environment of WWE at that time. So as I pull up my my little Wikipedia, I use Wikipedia for more things than I should. Okay, so there were 12 matches on this card, so pretty close to today's number of matches, but not nearly as long as some of these most of these matches were under 10 minutes. I mean, this is insane. So, okay, first match was Viscera beating Snitsky. Well, last eliminating Snitsky in a battle royal. That was 6 minutes. Oh my God. 6 minutes for a battle royal. Big Show and Kane defeated Carlito and Chris Masters in a tag team match for the World Tag Team Championship. Oh, doesn't the World Tag Team Championship sound so much better than the Raw or SmackDown? Because when you're doing it by brand, you're slicing the value in half because you have half of a pool of candidates that could challenge you for your championship. Thus, it should mean half of what it does. So that's one of the belts I'm totally for unifying, our tag team championships. Rob Van Dam defeated Bobby Lashley, Finlay, Matt Hardy, Ric Flair, and Shelton Benjamin in a Money in the Bank ladder match. That was 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. I mean, my God, that should at least be 20, 23 minutes, 24 minutes. But this is also a time, if you have not watched wrestling, you know, or you didn't watch it back in the early to mid 2000s, Money in the Bank, when it was invented, only took place at WrestleMania. So it was from WrestleMania to WrestleMania, and it was only not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago, that WWE actually implemented the Money in the Bank pay-per-view itself and created its own pay-per-view. Okay, John Bradshaw Layfield with Jillian Hall defeated Chris Benoit for the WWE United States Championship in just under 10 minutes. Anybody remember Jillian Hall? She was the statistician, I think, or some kind of business associate of JBL who had some weird growth on her face that we're all supposed to ignore. I remember that very well, and I think the Boogeyman ate it off. It was just a stick-on, but it wasn't supposed to be. It was, oh Lord. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please YouTube this. Edge with Lita defeated Mick Foley in a hardcore match. 14 minutes. This was one of the best matches on the card, no doubt, especially on the men's side here. Great storyline, well executed, really made Edge a star. Like, this solidified him as a star and a badass. So maybe I'll review that someday. The Boogeyman, in an intergender handicap match, defeated Booker T and Sharmell in 3 minutes and 43 seconds. My God. Probably, was that like the shortest match in WrestleMania history or something? I mean, that, wow. Okay. And you don't hear the word intergender too often, do you? In wrestling, it's always mixed tag. Mixed means women compete with the women, men compete with the men. Intergender is almost a non-factor in today's wrestling environment. Mickie James, here we go. On the 7th match on the card, so kind of buried right in the middle here. Mickie James versus Trish Stratus here for the Women's Championship. I'll leave the finish to your imagination. I'm going to keep you in limbo as if you can't just Google it quickly. So this match went 8 minutes and 48 seconds. So that's the focus here of tonight's show. The match right after, Undertaker defeated Mark Henry in a casket match. Easily the biggest match of Mark Henry's career. I remember when The Undertaker faced Mark Henry, I was thinking to myself, what? Mark Henry? You know, it's not that Mark Henry is not a legitimate badass. He was literally the strongest man in the world. That's not the point. The point is that Mark Henry for so long had not been defined as a main eventer, and all of a sudden he gets thrown in a main event with Undertaker. I mean, I have no complaints. It was just, a bit striking that at WrestleMania, Undertaker was facing Mark Henry. But, hell, Mark Henry, in his own right, had a hell of a career. The Hall of Pain, the salmon-coated faux retirement speech, and then did the slam to John Cena. That was, God almighty, I remember that. That was great. Oh, okay, here we go. Shawn Michaels defeated Mr. McMahon in a no-holds-barred match. I think I've covered that before, too. One of the best builds ever for a WrestleMania match. Ever. Yes, Vince McMahon was in the match, and he gave himself 18 minutes here. But I loved the build to this. To me, this should be a blueprint for a lot of big-time matches, and I'll explain that someday. Because I don't want to get too far into that match. It's going to be a black hole, or big rabbit hole for me, and that's not what tonight's show's about. But Shawn Michaels versus Vince McMahon, WrestleMania 22. If you want to enjoy yourself, you want to feel real heel heat, oh my God, great build. Rey Mysterio defeated Randy Orton and Kurt Angle in a triple threat match for the WWE, or at that time, for the World Heavyweight Championship in 9 minutes and 19 seconds. Oh God, so this is a sign of the times, isn't it? Tori Wilson defeated Candice Michelle, get ready for this, guys, in a Playboy pillow fight match. I'll let that sink in. That, again, this is a sign of the times. It tells you where we were in wrestling history. It tells you where we were as a society. It tells you where we were as wrestling fans accepting this as entertainment. And look, I was never offended by it. These women were making a damn good living. So, I mean, you could say, as a woman, I was offended by this. I would tell you right now that if Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle were asked, they would say, hell, I don't have to put my body in the line. I don't have to, throw myself off the top rope and risk injury. All I have to do is just get in my underwear and, have a pillow fight with another wrestler? Okay. By the way, here's your $100,000 check. So they're laughing all the way to the bank. If you think that if the women are offended by this or anybody's offended by this and they're thinking, oh my God, that's so demeaning. Yeah, again, if you step back and look at it, yes, we love the wrestling. I would agree that the majority of fans like the wrestling that the women are doing now versus back then. But the ones really laughing are Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle all the way to the effing bank. So I'm not advocating for this to come back. It was never a thing to me. I didn't enjoy it. I think it was just not entertaining. It was just silly, stupid. It was even, again, I was like 20, 21 years old at this time, and I was like, meh. It didn't do anything for me. It was nothing more than a breather before the main event, which was John Cena versus Triple H in a singles match, the WWE Championship. In 22 minutes and 2 seconds, John Cena beat Triple H by submission. And the biggest thing you remember about that match is not necessarily match quality, although it was very good and really, really helped his career, John Cena's career at that time, was the crowd reaction. That crowd reaction was brutal. Absolutely brutal towards John Cena. It made me smile. Because remember, we're going through a transition. WWE is trying to find their next big star. Austin's gone. Brock's gone. Who are they going to put in there? John Cena looked like he was next, and he arrived not without resistance because it was such a striking difference from The Rock and Austin. And John Cena got absolutely smoldered by the crowd that night. Go listen. It is hard to watch, but it's beautiful at the same time. I loved it. I loved every second, and I thought they were going to turn him heel. And they were in Chicago at the Rosemont Horizon, one of the best arenas ever for wrestling. And John Cena was getting destroyed. And I remember in a backstage interview he did after that, I don't know if it was on Bite This, I think that was the show it was called, or some kind of like WWE.com exclusive where he said, not everyone was with me tonight, but those that were, I heard you, and the chain gang is strong, or something like that. I mean, when he started talking about chain gang, I mean, that's like what a gang in middle school calls themselves. I mean, it's just like, it's very childish. That was just, to me, not something that attracted me, especially going through the Attitude Era. But anyway, okay, I'm getting off track. That was the lineup for WrestleMania 22 here that took place back in 2006, April 2nd, 2006, at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois, really outside of Chicago. So, very interesting lineup. Certainly, the headline was either Shawn versus Vince or John Cena versus Triple H. But for the women, no question about it, Mickie James versus Trish Stratus for the Women's Championship was the match of the night for the women. I mean, granted, there were only two. This was really the one that I think really has stood the test of time. And there was one thing that happened during this match. I can't show you, because if I showed you, this wouldn't be a podcast. And this is something that WWE has scrubbed from their video library. I don't even think on WWE Network you can see this. I think they've scrubbed it. I'm going to do my best to describe this and be PG at the same time. Not easy. Mickie James was this wacky, crazy character. She was very different from any of the other women that were on the roster at that time. Most of them were sexualized. Most of them were eye candy, valets, doing pillow fights, that kind of stuff. There were a few women that were legitimate, and you looked at them with, hey, this woman's actually got it. Like, she's taking this seriously. She's not just here to be eye candy. And one of them was Trish Stratus. One of them was Lita. I mean, you have Molly Holly, among others. But Mickie James stepped in, and she was immediately different. And she reminded me a little bit of Victoria. If you guys remember Victoria came in initially just a complete psychopath. Her crazy face was money. And I don't think they really did enough with Victoria to really see her through, from what I recall. Victoria was much different, psychotic. And Mickie James took some of that, but she also took the element of being not just psycho and being kind of like Nikki Cross crazy when she came in initially, Not like that. Mickie James came in, and she was initially just being best friends with Trish Stratus. She was being very friendly, and it started to descend slowly into being very clingy. It descended into, hey, where are you? What are you doing? Kind of thing. And then into a possessive type of relationship where no one can have Trish Stratus except for her. Mickie told Trish she was in love with her. So they took the elements of real life relationships that many of us have with completely psychotic people, of possessiveness. Who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? I think we've all been there and done that, right? So they took a lot of those real life elements and blew them up. Of course, it's wrestling. You got to be more dramatic. And they put it into a storyline with a female woman, Mickie, that executed it perfectly. The little psychotic but innocent nature that Mickie James possessed was magnetic, but you still wanted to see Trish beat the hell out of her. Because I think we can all relate to people we know that are like that we've unfortunately dated, or we know people that have dated those kinds of people. So when you're able to relate and live vicariously, you've got them hooked. What do you think we all live through Stone Cold Steve Austin for? Beating up your boss, right? Very relatable. Not actually doing it, but sometimes the instinct or the want to do something like that, of course. So Mickie James hit on a lot of different levels. She was also very good in the ring. And today's Mickie James, when she does pop up, which is very rare, is a much more watered down version that you don't see. She's very vanilla now. She's kind of just blended into the rest of the roster that comes up, or that is there. And she's just another girl, another woman. She's got the tenure, but she's just another woman there that she's very vanilla. There's no other way to put it. Back then, she was psychotic in a innocent way. And what I was going to describe was that during this match, Mickie James or Trish Stratus was going for Stratusfaction. Mickie James, while she was in the headlock part of the Stratusfaction, grabbed the crotch of Trish Stratus, which the King reacted to like, hey, wait a minute. I'm not trying to get too graphic because this is PG, but we all know where we're going with this. Trish let go, and Trish Stratus ended up licking her fingers. I'm going to keep your imagination there. If you want to see the full clip, just YouTube Mickie James licks Trish Stratus. Very quickly. I mean, you'll see what I'm talking about. And Mickie James then just smiles. I remember when this happened, I was like, whoa. Because even in the Attitude Era, which this still technically was, the Ruthless Aggression Era. This was the Ruthless Aggression Era, which was still TV-14. This was still striking even for me. Because you don't often, number one, actually grab someone there, especially the women. You can insinuate, you can, puppies and all that stuff. But it wasn't something that was ever explicitly done. So for Mickie James to do this, she had to have gone into business for herself on this. Really just diving deep into her character of being this complete psychopath. An obsession. There's the word I was missing. An obsession with Trish Stratus. And being a big fan of her, which is really what she was going into WrestleMania as, and still saying she loves her. And I remember she even tied Trish Stratus to a chair on Raw. I mean, she did some sick stuff. But this was, like, again, it was striking. I wasn't offended. I mean, come on now. I'm like 20 years old. You think I'm going to be like, oh my God, this is awful. This is so, come on, let's be real. It wasn't that. It was just like, whoa, did I just see that? Like, did that just happen on WWE TV? I mean, that bordered on, TVMA, not TV-14. So, WWE, I believe, has since scrubbed it, but it's on YouTube. You can find it. So there was that moment, which is one of the more infamous moments ever that Mickie James has ever done, if not the most infamous moment she's ever had. And it's, I don't know if that's sad or not, or if it's admirable? I don't know, but it certainly has never made people forget that moment. Make people forget that moment. It's I don't know. Okay, I've spent too much time on that single moment. Back to the match. These women really were physical, and they only had 8 minutes. Imagine that. 8 minutes. The women essentially had 8 minutes out of a pay-per-view at WrestleMania. 8. I don't count the pillow fight. That doesn't count. It's a bathroom break. They had 8 minutes. And you fast forward to WrestleMania 35, they main event WrestleMania. So think of the progression there. The progression for the women is just insanely awesome. And deservedly so. They have done such a great job. WWE has done such a great job. And the women, and yeah, it hasn't all been butterflies and roses. There's been certainly some ups and downs with how they're positioning the women. There have been sometimes there have been moments of, bringing back bad memories of the old women's, during the Divas Championship era and sexualizing women. There have been certain times of that, hints of that being brought back, and then they get right back into the meat of wrestling and great storytelling and great matches. That's what women's wrestling is right now. And so, again, when you think back to this time when women had 8 minutes on a pay-per-view, and now they have like 3-4 matches, and they're main eventing pay-per-views, and main evented WrestleMania, and have their own Royal Rumble, and had their own Money in the Bank, had their own multiple Hell in a Cell matches, among many other firsts. I don't even know if there's any more firsts for the women. I think they finally worn that out. But the progression of the women is just awesome. And I hope it continues. Because seeing women's wrestling at times is more enjoyable than the men's. I will say that. And I think the men should be nervous about their spots being taken from women. They should be. Because I think for how many years, decades, it's just been a foregone conclusion that the men are always going to have the main event. They're always going to be in the spotlight. They're always going to hold the most important championships, be in the most important segments, and be the most viewed segments of the night. And that has been proven wrong time and time again over the last 5-6 years. So, congratulations to all the women in WWE. I'm sure there's much more to come. So, okay, enough of that rah-rah stuff. The match, again, physical. The storyline was great with a psychopath that was obsessed with Trish Stratus. Initially kind of friendly and perky and just lovely to be around, and this just happy fan that's there. And it turns more and more sinister over time. Slowly you see her possessive qualities. Slowly you see how obsessed she is. Slowly you realize what her true intentions are, to capture Trish, to never let her go. Trish, again, was tied to a chair during Raw. It was just unsettling, but it was so damn good. And the match, well, let's get to some audio from that.
Didn't pay off there. And now hey! Look at this! Here's some great athleticism. Oh, wait a minute, it's being reversed here. Mickie James! Mickie James counter Trish Stratus, and the end may be near for the women's champion with her title on the line. Look at this face! Mickie James, hitting combination, and Trish barely able to kick out. Hey, inside cradle! The inside cradle got a near fall.
All right, so the one thing I want to mention here, and I didn't really bring up towards the beginning of this analysis, is the crowd reaction. Again, we're in Chicago, where a lot of the, quote, smart fans, smart marks, whatever, are. And they were cheering. I'd say 60, 40, 70, 30 for Mickie James. And I see why now. I get it now. Being 15 years more educated in wrestling, you'd be like, wait a minute, well, Trish is the beloved babyface. Mickie James is a complete psychopath. It comes down to this. When you have a resident champion that's been there forever, they're just constantly champion, and you've had time to love them, and someone cool comes along that is positioned as a heel, but man, there's something magnetic about them. They're different. You gravitate to them, and you're thinking to yourself, what if they were champion? That'd be so much more interesting, because we know what Trish Stratus is like as champion. We've seen it. what would it be like if we had somebody like Mickie James as champion? It was just the WWE fans. I call them fans because we're not out in space, so we're not in a universe. But the fans telling WWE, look, we're ready for a change. That's what this is for. That's what this is always about. When the fans, cheer for who they're not supposed to, or boo who they're not supposed to, they're trying to get ahead of the curve and tell you what they really feel. It's not about having fun. You don't pay to go have fun and do something that you don't really believe in. You pay your hard-earned money to go to a show to express how you truly feel. So I never understood that logic from a lot of people who, they're just having fun. They're all having fun. They just be rebellious. No. I don't pay money to express ingenuine or disingenuous emotions. I don't know about you. But that's what this was about, and that I really didn't pick up on. It's not strikingly bad like Triple H and John Cena, where a complete rejection of the John Cena main event character, babyface-wise, was shattered in the main event. But certainly it was present here. It was present here, and I've always loved the Chicago crowd. I've always loved the Philly crowd. I've always loved the New York crowd. All the big markets who tend to be ahead of the curve, I'm always a big fan of, because it's the true test of whether WWE is positioning who they or casting who they have correctly in the roles assigned to them. So let's get to the finish of the match here. And I just did confirm, because I didn't watch this match on the network, I watched it on YouTube. They actually did scrub that whole licking her fingers from the WWE network. It's scrubbed. It's gone. So even for TV 14, it's too hot for TV. Remember that whole series? It's like, Girls Gone Wild, too hot for TV. This apparently was. And I understand why, which also tells you this was not either well received, if it was predetermined to have this happen, or Mickie James went into business for herself and she got a whole bunch of backlash for it. Either way, they scrubbed it. And what they did was they had her grab Trish's crotch, and then they panned to the crowd. So you don't see what's happening. And JR, when you hear JR say, you'll see on the network, say, what the heck? Yeah, that's Jim Ross being like, whoa, what's going on? Right? Like that was a little much, but I don't know. Certainly a moment that will never, ever die. WWE can scrub it. It's there forever on YouTube. Okay, so let's get to the finish of the match here.
Mickie James trying to take Trish mentally right out of her game after physically trying to take that left leg away. Took me mentally right out of my game. And Mickie James now taking down Trish Stratus. Will it be enough? Yes, it is. The WWE champion. The nut job has won the title.
Here's your winner and the new WWE Women's Champion, Mickie James.
The inmate's going to be running the asylum. I think there's some fans here that got a hall pass from the home. They're actually cheering this psychotic woman. Mickie James used some very unique feminine strategy to take Trish Stratus mentally out of the game, and some overt physicality to exploit the leg and then capture the title. In her first WrestleMania match, Mickie James has won the title. Let's check out this.
Oh, wow. So a chick kick, which is what put Trish down, is what Mickie used. And Jim Ross, who's trying to cover for the crowd reaction, as he should do as an announcer, is talking about they're actually cheering this psychopath, this nut job. Yeah, because she's cool as hell. There's a little bit, as guys, we sometimes gravitate to the crazy chicks, even though we know that they're bad news. It's just what happens during our lives. Sometimes you gravitate to the nut jobs. They're bad news bears, but there's just something gravitational about them. And I think that's what happens here. It's a genuine or a primarily male audience. You're going to hear that response. And I don't know, maybe it's just being a guy understanding the psychology behind this, but I don't know why Jim Ross is surprised. I mean, you have your resident Trish Stratus, kind of vanilla, but good looking, blonde, say your prayers, take your vitamins type of champion, which is what Trish essentially was during that time. And she was never really great at promos either. And you get this nut job coming in who's just so much different. I don't know. I totally get now why she was cheered. And I remember actually being, at the time, I was kind of, if I remember correctly, 15 years ago, I was a little bit annoyed because I wanted to see Trish put down the nut job. But then there was also a part of me that's like, it's kind of cool. It's kind of let's make a change and see what happens. So certainly a match to behold for the women here, a match that will live in infamy for the single one move that WWE tried to scrub. I'd recommend that you watch it on the network or watch it on YouTube if you want to see the uncensored version of it that is too hot for TV. And again, guys, I appreciate you being here for Wrestling Nostalgia. It's always a blast to be able to, get into our time machine and go back to whatever time and place that we want. So tonight was WrestleMania 22, Trish Stratus versus Mickie James for the Women's Championship. Not Raw or SmackDown, just the Women's Championship. That would then, very shortly thereafter, morph into the beloved Divas Championship. And I say that with all the sarcasm in the world. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. The mailbag is probably going to be dropping shortly or is already in my feed. So the mailbag episode is also dropping along with NXT review and a bunch of other shows coming your way this week. So thank you so much, everybody. As always, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts if you have a moment, and I'll talk to you next time.